Welcome, brave souls, to Dreadful Diaries, where the shadows whisper secrets and the night holds untold horrors. If you crave the thrill of the unknown, make sure to subscribe and join our community of fellow horror enthusiasts. Now, dim the lights, grab a blanket, and let's dive into our first tale of terror.
It was a chilly autumn evening when Sarah decided to take a spontaneous road trip through the countryside. The leaves were turning vibrant shades of orange and red, and the winding roads beckoned her to explore. She had always loved the thrill of the open road, but this time, she felt an inexplicable sense of unease as the sun dipped below the horizon. As she drove along a deserted stretch of road, the headlights of her car illuminated the darkening landscape. Suddenly, she spotted a figure standing by the roadside, thumb outstretched. Hesitant but feeling a sense of compassion, she slowed down and rolled down her window. "Need a ride?" she asked, eyeing the young man with tousled hair and a worn-out backpack. "Yeah, thanks. I'm heading to the next town," he replied, a friendly smile breaking across his face as he climbed into the passenger seat. As they drove, the man introduced himself as Jake. He had a laid-back demeanor and a knack for storytelling. Sarah found herself captivated by his tales of the area, especially one about a ghost that haunted the very road they were traveling on. "Legend has it that a woman died in a car accident right around here," Jake said, his voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper. "They say her spirit roams the road, searching for her lost love. If you see her, you're supposed to turn back immediately. Otherwise, you might never make it to your destination." Sarah chuckled nervously, trying to brush off the chill that crept up her spine. "That's just a story to scare people," she said, but deep down, she felt a twinge of fear. As they continued driving, the conversation flowed easily, and Sarah felt a strange connection with Jake. He spoke of his travels, his dreams, and the places he had seen. But as they approached a small town, the atmosphere shifted. The road became narrower, and the trees loomed ominously on either side. "Here's good," Jake said, pointing to a spot just outside the town. Sarah pulled over, and he turned to her with a grateful smile. "Thanks for the ride. It was nice to meet someone who actually listens." "Of course. Safe travels," she replied, watching as he stepped out of the car. As she drove away, Sarah felt a sense of unease wash over her. She glanced in the rearview mirror, but Jake was already out of sight. It wasn't until she reached the next town that she realized her wallet was missing. Panic set in as she pulled over to the side of the road, frantically searching her bag. "I must have left it in the car," she muttered to herself, her heart racing. She turned around and drove back to the spot where she had dropped Jake off. When she arrived, the area was eerily quiet. She stepped out of the car and called out, "Jake? Are you here?" But there was no response. The road was empty, and the shadows of the trees seemed to stretch longer in the fading light. Feeling a knot of dread in her stomach, Sarah walked to the spot where Jake had exited the car. She looked around, hoping to catch a glimpse of him, but he was nowhere to be found. Just then, an old man approached from the nearby town, his face lined with age and wisdom. "Looking for someone, miss?" he asked, eyeing her curiously. "Yeah, I picked up a hitchhiker named Jake. He was just here," she replied, her voice trembling. The old man's expression changed, a mix of pity and concern crossing his face. "You must be mistaken, dear. There hasn't been a hitchhiker on this road in years. The last one was a young man who died in a car accident right around here." Sarah's heart sank as the realization hit her. "What do you mean?" The old man sighed, his voice heavy with sorrow. He was a good kid. Died trying to get home. They say his spirit still wanders these roads, looking for someone to listen to his stories. A chill ran down Sarah's spine as she recalled Jake's tales. The ghost of the woman, the eerie atmosphere, and now this revelation. She felt a wave of nausea wash over her. But I talked to him. He was real. The old man shook his head. Sometimes, the line between this world and the next blurs. You may have met his spirit, but he's been gone for a long time. With trembling hands, Sarah turned to her car, her mind racing. She had to get out of there. As she drove away, she glanced in the rearview mirror one last time, half expecting to see Jake standing there, waving goodbye. But all she saw was the empty road stretching behind her, shrouded in darkness. The stories she had dismissed as mere folklore now felt all too real. As Sarah drove away from the haunting scene, her heart raced, and her mind swirled with disbelief. The old man's words echoed in her ears, and she struggled to process what had just happened. Had she really encountered a ghost? The thought sent shivers down her spine, but she couldn't shake the feeling that Jake had been more than just a figment of her imagination. Determined to find answers, she decided to stop at the nearest diner in the town. The neon sign flickered in the dim light, and she hoped to gather more information about the hitchhiker and the ghost stories that surrounded the area. As she entered, the warm glow of the diner felt comforting, but the atmosphere was thick with an unsettling tension. The waitress, a middle-aged woman with tired eyes, approached her table. "What can I get you?" she asked, her voice flat. "Just coffee, please," Sarah replied, trying to keep her composure. "I was wondering if you could tell me about the hitchhiker who died on this road." The waitress's expression shifted, a flicker of recognition crossing her face. "You're not the first to ask about him," she said quietly. "People come and go, but his story never fades. They say he still tries to reach out to travelers, looking for someone to share his tales with. Did you know him?" Sarah pressed, her curiosity piqued. The waitress nodded slowly. "I did. He was a good kid, always had a smile on his face. But that night, it was a stormy one. He was trying to get home when he lost control of his car. They found him on the side of the road, but his spirit never left." Sarah felt a chill creep up her spine. "What about the woman? The ghost that haunts the road?" The waitress sighed, glancing around as if to ensure no one was listening. "That's a different story. They say she was his girlfriend. She died in a separate accident, but her spirit is said to wander the same stretch of road, searching for him. Some believe they're connected, that they're both trapped in this limbo, forever seeking each other." The weight of the stories pressed down on Sarah, and she felt a strange sense of empathy for the lost souls. "Do you think they can find peace?" she asked softly. The waitress shrugged. "Some say that if you listen closely, you can hear them calling out to each other. But others believe they're doomed to wander until someone helps them find closure." With a heavy heart, Sarah finished her coffee and thanked the waitress. As she stepped outside, the night air felt colder, and the shadows seemed to stretch longer. She knew she had to confront the truth of what she had experienced. Determined to help Jake and the woman find peace, she drove back to the spot where she had dropped him off. The moon hung high in the sky, casting an ethereal glow over the road. As she parked her car, she felt a sense of calm wash over her, as if she were meant to be there. "Jake," she called out into the darkness, her voice trembling. "If you can hear me, I want to help you." Silence enveloped her, but then she heard a faint whisper carried by the wind. It was a soft, melodic voice, almost like a song. "Help us, find us." Sarah's heart raced as she followed the sound, her instincts guiding her deeper into the woods that bordered the road. The trees loomed overhead, their branches swaying gently in the breeze. She felt a presence beside her, a warmth that enveloped her like a comforting embrace. "Jake," she called again, her voice echoing through the trees. "I'm here to listen." Suddenly, the air grew still, and the whispers intensified. She felt a pull, as if the spirits were guiding her to a clearing. As she stepped into the open space, she saw two figures standing before her. One was a young man with tousled hair, and the other was a woman with a sorrowful expression. "Jake," she whispered, her heart pounding in her chest. The young man nodded, his eyes filled with longing. "Thank you for coming," he said, his voice soft yet filled with emotion. "I've been searching for her." The woman stepped forward, her gaze fixed on Jake. "I've missed you," she said, her voice trembling. "I thought I'd never find you again." Tears filled Sarah's eyes as she witnessed the reunion of the two lost souls. "You can be together now," she said, her voice breaking. "You don't have to wander anymore." As if in response, the air shimmered around them, and a warm light. The sun dipped below the horizon, casting long shadows across the landscape as Emma, a seasoned backpacker, approached the old, crumbling hotel. The sign above the entrance, once grand, now hung crooked and faded, reading, "The Crestwood Hotel." Rumors of its haunted past had circulated among travelers, but Emma was drawn to the thrill of the unknown. She had always been fascinated by ghost stories and the idea of exploring places long forgotten. As she stepped inside, the air grew cool and stale, filled with the scent of mildew and decay. The lobby was dimly lit, with dust motes dancing in the beams of her flashlight. Old furniture lay scattered about, covered in sheets that looked like ghosts themselves. Emma felt a shiver run down her spine but brushed it off as excitement. She set her backpack down and decided to explore the hotel before settling in for the night. The hallways were narrow and winding, lined with doors that had long been sealed shut. As she wandered deeper into the building, she couldn't shake the feeling that she was being watched. The silence was oppressive, broken only by the creaking of the floorboards beneath her feet. She paused, listening intently, and thought she heard faint whispers echoing through the halls. Shaking her head, she convinced herself it was just her imagination playing tricks on her. After a while, Emma found a room that seemed relatively intact. The bed was covered in a thick layer of dust, but it was better than sleeping on the floor. She set her things down and decided to take a quick look around before settling in for the night. As she rummaged through the drawers of the nightstand, she stumbled upon an old, leather-bound diary. Curiosity piqued, she opened it and began to read. The entries were written by a guest named Clara, who had stayed at the hotel several years prior. At first, the entries were mundane, detailing Clara's travels and her excitement about exploring the area. But as the days progressed, the tone shifted. Clara wrote about strange occurrences, whispers in the night, shadows moving in the corners of her vision, and an overwhelming sense of dread that seemed to seep into the very walls of the hotel. Emma's heart raced as she read the final entry, dated just days before Clara vanished. It was frantic and filled with fear. "I can feel it watching me," Clara had written. "There's something in this hotel, something malevolent. It preys on those who are alone. I can't stay here any longer. If anyone finds this, please warn others. Do not stay alone in this place." A chill ran down Emma's spine as she closed the diary. The whispers she had heard earlier echoed in her mind, and she felt a growing sense of unease. She glanced around the room, half expecting to see Clara's ghostly figure standing in the corner. The shadows seemed to deepen, and the air felt heavier, as if the hotel itself were alive and aware of her presence. Determined not to let fear get the best of her, Emma decided to explore the hotel further. She grabbed her flashlight and stepped back into the hallway. The whispers grew louder, swirling around her like a haunting melody. She followed the sound, her heart pounding in her chest, until she reached a door at the end of the hall that was slightly ajar. Pushing the door open, she found herself in a large ballroom, its grandeur faded but still evident. Chandeliers hung from the ceiling, their crystals covered in dust, and the floor was littered with debris. As she stepped inside, the whispers intensified, and she felt a cold breeze sweep through the room, sending shivers down her spine. Suddenly, the door slammed shut behind her, and Emma spun around, panic rising within her. She rushed to the door, but it wouldn't budge. The whispers morphed into frantic voices, echoing her name, calling out to her. Emma! Emma, you shouldn't be here. Desperate, she turned back to the ballroom, her flashlight flickering ominously. In the dim light, she saw shadows moving along the walls, twisting and contorting as if they were alive. The air grew thick with a sense of dread, and she could feel the malevolent presence that Clara had warned about. "Get out!" a voice screamed, echoing through the room. Emma's heart raced as she realized it was Clara's voice, pleading for her to leave. In that moment, she understood that the spirit was not just a ghost, it was a warning, a protector of those who had fallen victim to the hotel's dark history. With renewed determination, Emma turned back to the door and pushed with all her strength. It creaked open, and she stumbled out into the hallway, gasping for breath. The whispers faded, replaced by the sound of her own heartbeat pounding in her ears. She ran through the hotel, her footsteps echoing in the empty halls as she desperately sought an exit. The shadows seemed to reach for her, and the whispers grew louder, a cacophony of voices urging her to leave. Emma! Don't look back. Run! Clara's voice rang out, clear and urgent. Emma's heart raced as she sprinted down the corridor, her flashlight flickering erratically. She could feel the cold breath of the malevolent spirit behind her, as if it were chasing her, trying to pull her back into the darkness. She reached the staircase and bounded down the steps, her feet pounding against the worn wood. As she reached the ground floor, she spotted the front door, its frame looming like a beacon of hope. She dashed toward it, her hands trembling as she grasped the handle. It wouldn't budge. Panic surged through her as she pulled and pushed, but the door remained stubbornly shut. "Let me out. Please," she cried, her voice echoing in the empty lobby. The whispers intensified, swirling around her like a storm. She could feel the presence closing in, the air thick with malevolence. Just as despair began to take hold, she remembered the diary and Clara's warning. The spirit was not just a threat. It was a manifestation of the hotel's dark history, feeding off the fear of those who entered alone. Taking a deep breath, Emma closed her eyes and focused. "I'm not afraid of you," she shouted, her voice steady despite the fear coursing through her veins. "I'm here to help. I won't let you take me." The whispers faltered, and for a moment, silence enveloped her. She felt a shift in the air, as if the hotel itself was considering her words. With renewed determination, she turned back to the door and pushed with all her might. This time, it swung open with a creak, revealing the moonlit night outside. Emma didn't hesitate. She bolted through the doorway and into the cool night air, gasping for breath as she stumbled away from the hotel. The oppressive weight that had clung to her inside lifted, and she felt a sense of freedom wash over her. She turned back to look at the hotel, its dark silhouette looming against the starry sky. As she stood there, she felt a presence beside her, and for a brief moment, she saw Clara's figure standing at the entrance, a soft smile on her face. "Thank you," the spirit whispered, her voice gentle and filled with gratitude. "You've set me free." Tears filled Emma's eyes as she realized that Clara's spirit had been trapped, just as the hotel had been trapped in its own dark history. The malevolent force that had preyed on those who stayed alone was now weakened, perhaps even vanquished by Emma's courage. With one last look at the hotel, Emma turned and walked away, the whispers fading into the night. She felt a sense of peace settle over her, knowing that she had not only escaped but had also helped a lost soul find her way home. As she made her way back to the road, the moonlight illuminated her path, and the stars twinkled above, a reminder that even in the darkest places, there is always a glimmer of hope. Emma knew she would carry the memory of that night with her forever, a testament to the power of courage and compassion in the face of fear. After a long year filled with the chaos of city life, Alex decided it was time for a retreat. He craved solitude, a chance to recharge away from the noise and stress. When he stumbled upon a listing for a remote cabin deep in the woods, it seemed like the perfect escape. Nestled between towering pines and overlooking a serene lake, the cabin promised peace and tranquility. Upon arrival, Alex was enchanted by the rustic charm of the cabin. It was small but cozy, with a fireplace, a well-stocked kitchen, and a porch that offered breathtaking views of the surrounding wilderness. He spent the first day hiking, fishing, and soaking in the beauty of nature, feeling the weight of the world lift from his shoulders. As night fell, the woods transformed. The chirping of crickets and the rustling of leaves created a symphony of sounds that both soothed and unsettled him. After a simple dinner, Alex settled in front of the fireplace with a book, the flickering flames casting dancing shadows on the walls. But as the clock struck midnight, a series of strange noises broke the stillness. It started as a faint rustling outside, followed by what sounded like whispers carried by the wind. Alex's heart raced as he set his book down, straining to listen. The whispers grew louder, and he could have sworn he heard his name being called. "Alex," the voice seemed to beckon, echoing through the trees. Feeling a mix of curiosity and dread, he grabbed a flashlight and stepped outside. The cool night air hit him like a wave, and he shivered as he scanned the darkness. The moonlight illuminated the trees, their branches swaying gently, but there was no sign of movement. Just as he was about to turn back, he caught a glimpse of something, a shadow darting between the trees. "Hello?" he called out, his voice trembling slightly. "Is anyone there?" Silence answered him, thick and oppressive. He took a cautious step forward, the beam of his flashlight cutting through the darkness. As he ventured deeper into the woods, the whispers returned, swirling around him like a haunting melody. He felt a chill run down his spine, but he pressed on, driven by a mix of fear and intrigue. After a few minutes of wandering, he stumbled upon a clearing. In the center stood an old, weathered tree, its trunk gnarled and twisted. Beneath it lay a pile of scattered photographs, their edges frayed and yellowed with age. Alex knelt down, his heart pounding as he picked one up. The image showed a group of people standing in front of the very cabin he was renting. They were smiling, but something about their expressions felt off, as if they were hiding a secret. He flipped through the stack, each photograph revealing more occupants of the cabin, all marked with a bold X across their faces. Panic surged through him as he realized the implications. These were not just random guests, they were previous occupants of the cabin, and the marking suggested something sinister. He quickly rifled through the remaining photos, his hands shaking. Each one bore the same mark, and the last few images showed fewer and fewer people, their faces increasingly obscured. Suddenly, a rustling sound broke the silence, and Alex whipped around, his flashlight beam darting through the trees. The whispers grew louder, now sounding like frantic voices, warning him to leave. He felt a presence behind him, cold and malevolent, and he knew he had to get back to the cabin. He sprinted through the woods, branches clawing at his arms as he pushed through the underbrush. The whispers followed him, echoing in his mind, urging him to escape. When he finally reached the cabin, he slammed the door shut and locked it, his heart racing. Breathless, he leaned against the door, trying to calm himself. But the feeling of being watched lingered, and he could hear the whispers outside, growing more insistent. "Alex, you're next." Desperate for answers, he grabbed his phone and tried to call for help, but there was no signal. He was completely isolated. The only thing he could do was wait until morning, hoping the night would pass without incident. As the hours dragged on, the whispers turned into a cacophony of voices, each one calling his name, taunting him. Shadows danced outside the windows, and he could see movement just beyond the glass. He felt the weight of dread settle over him, knowing he was not alone. Just before dawn, the whispers reached a fever pitch, and Alex could no longer bear it. He grabbed a kitchen knife, steeling himself for whatever was outside. He opened the door, ready to confront the darkness. The first light of dawn broke through the trees, illuminating the clearing. The whispers faded, replaced by the soft sounds of nature waking up. But as he stepped outside, he found the photographs scattered across the ground, their images now eerily blank, as if the faces had been erased. Panic surged through him again, and he knelt down to gather them, his heart racing. Each photograph felt like a warning, a reminder of the fate that awaited him if he didn't escape. Suddenly, he heard a rustling behind him. He spun around, knife raised, but there was nothing there, just the trees swaying gently in the morning breeze. The whispers had quieted, but the sense of dread remained, heavy in the air. He could feel the malevolent presence lurking just beyond his sight, waiting for him to let his guard down. Determined to leave, Alex rushed back into the cabin to grab his belongings. He quickly packed his backpack, his hands trembling as he shoved clothes and essentials inside. He glanced at the clock, time was slipping away, and he knew he had to act fast. As he stepped outside again, the sun was rising higher, casting long shadows across the ground. He made his way to his car, heart pounding in his chest. The gravel crunched beneath his feet, and he felt the weight of unseen eyes upon him. He fumbled with his keys, his hands slick with sweat, and finally managed to unlock the door. Just as he was about to get in, he heard a voice, clear and chilling. "You can't leave, Alex. You belong to us now." He froze, the knife slipping from his grip and clattering to the ground. The voice was unmistakably Clara's, the woman from the photographs. He turned slowly, and there she stood, her ghostly figure shimmering in the morning light. Her face was marked with an X, just like the others, and her eyes were filled with sorrow. "Please," she pleaded, her voice echoing with desperation. "You have to help us. We were trapped here, and now you are too. You must break the curse." "What curse?" Alex stammered, fear gripping him. "What do you want from me?" "The cabin feeds on fear and loneliness," Clara explained, her voice trembling. "It lures people in, and once you're here, it doesn't let you go. You must find a way to break the cycle. You have to confront the darkness that dwells within these woods." Alex's mind raced. He thought of the photographs, the markings, and the whispers. He realized that the cabin was not just a building, it was a living entity, feeding off the souls of those who entered. He had to find a way to confront it, to break the hold it had over him and the spirits trapped within. "Tell me what to do," he said, determination replacing fear. "I'll help you." Clara's expression softened, and for a moment, the shadows around her seemed to recede. "You must return to the clearing. There is a stone altar there, a remnant of an ancient ritual. If you can perform the rite and confront the spirit that haunts this place, you may be able to free us all." With newfound resolve, Alex nodded. "I'll do it. I won't let this place take me." Clara's figure began to fade, but her voice lingered in the air. "Hurry, before it's too late." Without wasting another moment, Alex sprinted back into the woods, retracing his steps to the clearing. The sun was now fully risen, casting a warm glow over the landscape, but he could still feel the darkness lurking just beneath the surface. He reached the clearing and found the stone altar, overgrown with moss and surrounded by ancient trees. Taking a deep breath, he approached the altar and placed his hands on the cool stone. He closed his eyes and focused, recalling Clara's words. "I confront the darkness that binds us," he declared, his voice steady. "I seek to break the curse that holds us captive." As he spoke, the air around him began to shift. The whispers returned, swirling around him like a tempest. Shadows danced at the edges of his vision, and he felt the weight of the malevolent spirit pressing down on him. But he stood firm, channeling his fear into strength. "I will not be afraid," he shouted, his voice echoing through the clearing. "I will not be a victim." The shadows surged forward, coalescing into a dark figure that loomed before him, its eyes glowing with malice. "You think you can defy me?" it hissed. The sun hung low in the sky, casting a golden hue over the desolate landscape as Mia drove her old pickup truck down a dusty road. She had always been drawn to the stories of ghost towns, places where time stood still and the echoes of the past lingered in the air. Today, she was on a quest to explore one such town, rumored to be haunted by the spirits of its former inhabitants. As she arrived at the ghost town of Eldridge, a sense of eerie excitement washed over her. The remnants of old buildings stood like sentinels, their wooden frames weathered and worn. The silence was palpable, broken only by the soft rustle of the wind through the cracked windows. Mia parked her truck and stepped out, the crunch of gravel beneath her boots the only sound accompanying her as she wandered through the streets. She explored the remnants of the town, peering into abandoned shops and homes, each one telling a story of a life once lived. But it was the old saloon at the end of the street that caught her attention. The sign above the door creaked in the wind, reading, "The Silver Dollar Saloon." Intrigued, Mia pushed the door open, the hinges groaning in protest. Inside, the air was thick with dust, and the scent of aged wood filled her nostrils. The saloon was dimly lit, with faded photographs lining the walls and a bar that had long been stripped of its spirits. But what drew her in was the old piano sitting in the corner, its keys yellowed and covered in a layer of dust. As she approached, Mia felt a strange energy in the room. She reached out to touch the piano, and to her astonishment, the keys began to play on their own, producing a haunting melody that echoed through the saloon. The sound was both beautiful and unsettling, and she found herself captivated by the music. As she listened, the atmosphere in the room shifted. The air grew colder, and shadows began to dance along the walls. Mia squinted, trying to make sense of what she was seeing. Ghostly figures emerged from the corners of the room, their translucent forms swirling gracefully to the music. They were dressed in old-fashioned clothing, their faces serene yet sorrowful, as if they were lost in a memory of a time long gone. Mia's heart raced with a mix of fear and fascination. She had read about spirits that lingered in places like this, but witnessing it firsthand was an entirely different experience. The figures danced in perfect harmony, their movements fluid and ethereal, and she felt an inexplicable urge to join them. But as the music played on, the atmosphere shifted again. The door she had entered through slammed shut with a deafening bang, and Mia jumped, her heart pounding in her chest. She rushed to the door, but it wouldn't budge. Panic set in as she pulled on the handle, realizing she was trapped. The ghostly figures paused in their dance, turning their attention to her. Their expressions shifted from serene to something more intense, as if they were aware of her presence in a way that sent chills down her spine. One of the spirits, a woman in a flowing dress, stepped forward, her eyes filled with longing. "Join us," she beckoned, her voice a soft whisper that seemed to resonate in Mia's mind. "Dance with us, and you will be free." Mia shook her head, fear gripping her. "I can't. I need to leave." The spirits exchanged glances, and the music swelled, filling the room with an urgency that made her heart race. "You cannot leave until you dance," the woman insisted, her voice echoing with a haunting melody. "We are bound to this place, and so are you." Desperation clawed at Mia as she backed away from the spirits. "I don't want to be trapped here," she cried, her voice trembling. "I just wanted to explore." The music grew louder, and the spirits resumed their dance, swirling around her in a mesmerizing display. Mia felt the pull of their energy, the allure of joining them in their eternal waltz. But deep down, she knew that giving in meant losing herself forever. Summoning her courage, Mia closed her eyes and focused on the music. She remembered the stories of those who had been trapped in ghost towns, their souls bound to the places they had loved. "I won't let you take me," she shouted, her voice cutting through the melody. With that declaration, she turned and ran toward the piano, her heart pounding. She reached out and slammed her hand down on the keys, silencing the music. The room fell into an eerie stillness, and the spirits froze mid-dance, their expressions shifting to confusion. "Let me go," Mia pleaded, her voice filled with determination. "You don't have to be trapped here." The woman's gaze softened, and for a moment, Mia felt a flicker of understanding pass between them. The spirits paused, their ethereal forms shimmering in the dim light, as if contemplating her words. The air was thick with tension, and Mia could sense the weight of their sorrow. "Free us," the woman whispered, her voice barely audible. "Help us find peace." Mia's heart ached at the desperation in the spirit's eyes. She realized that these souls were not malevolent, they were simply lost, bound to the saloon by their unfinished business. The music had been their way of reliving the joy of life, but it had also become a trap, ensnaring anyone who dared to enter. "Okay," Mia said, her voice steadying. "I'll help you. But you have to promise to let me go." The spirits nodded, their forms flickering with hope. "We need to remember," the woman said. "The music must be played, but it must be played with intention. You must help us recall the night we last danced, the night we were taken from this world." Mia took a deep breath, her fear transforming into resolve. She approached the piano once more, her fingers hovering over the keys. "What do I need to play?" she asked, looking back at the spirits. "Play the song of our last dance," the woman replied, her voice filled with longing. "The one that brought us joy before the darkness fell." Mia closed her eyes, trying to recall the melody that had filled the room when she first entered. She let the memories wash over her, focusing on the emotions that the music had evoked. With a deep breath, she began to play, her fingers moving over the keys with newfound purpose. The haunting melody filled the saloon once more, but this time it was different. It was infused with her intention, a blend of sorrow and hope. As she played, the spirits began to sway, their forms glowing brighter with each note. The room transformed, the dust and decay fading away, replaced by the vibrant colors of a lively celebration. Mia opened her eyes and saw the spirits dancing joyfully, their faces alight with happiness. They twirled and spun, their laughter echoing through the saloon, and for the first time, she felt a sense of connection with them. She was no longer an intruder, she was part of their story. As the music swelled, the spirits began to gather around her, their hands reaching out in gratitude. "Thank you," the woman said, her voice filled with warmth. "You have given us the gift of remembrance." With one final flourish, Mia played the last note, and the music faded into silence. The spirits paused, their expression serene, and Mia felt a wave of peace wash over her. The air shimmered, and the spirits began to dissolve into the light, their forms becoming one with the essence of the saloon. "Remember us," the woman whispered as she faded away. "And know that we are free." As the last of the spirits vanished, the saloon transformed back into its dilapidated state, but the oppressive atmosphere had lifted. Mia stood alone in the quiet room, her heart racing but filled with a sense of accomplishment. She had helped the spirits find peace, and in doing so, she had freed herself from the fear that had threatened to consume her. With a final glance around the saloon, Mia stepped toward the door, which now swung open easily. She walked out into the sunlight, the warmth of the day enveloping her. The ghost town felt different now, as if the weight of its tragic past had been lifted. As she drove away, Mia couldn't help but smile. She had come seeking adventure and solitude, but she had found something far more profound, a connection to the past and the knowledge that even in the darkest places, there is always a chance for redemption and peace. The echoes of the spirits' laughter lingered in her mind, a reminder that their stories would live on, forever intertwined with her own. Jake had always loved the open road, the thrill of adventure coursing through his veins as he drove through the vast landscapes of the countryside. This time, however, he found himself on a desolate stretch of highway, surrounded by nothing but endless fields and the occasional cluster of trees. The sun was setting, casting long shadows across the asphalt, and the air was thick with an unsettling stillness. As he drove, he turned up the music, trying to shake off the creeping sense of unease that had settled in his stomach. The road ahead seemed to stretch on forever, and the isolation was palpable. Just as he was about to dismiss his discomfort, he spotted something up ahead, a figure standing in the middle of the road. His heart raced as he squinted to get a better look. It was a woman, her long hair blowing in the wind, wearing a flowing white dress that seemed to glow in the fading light. Panic surged through him as he slammed on the brakes, swerving to avoid her. The tires screeched against the pavement, and he felt the car lurch as it skidded off the road and into a ditch. The impact jolted him, and for a moment, he sat in stunned silence, his heart pounding in his chest. He could hear the sound of his own breathing, the world outside the car eerily quiet. Gathering his wits, he unbuckled his seatbelt and stepped out, adrenaline coursing through his veins. "Hello?" he called out, scanning the area for the woman. The road was empty, the figure nowhere to be seen. A chill ran down his spine as he looked around, the shadows growing longer and darker. Had he imagined her? He shook his head, trying to dispel the confusion. As he reached for his phone to call for help, he noticed a series of missed calls from an unknown number. Frowning, he opened the call log and pressed on the most recent one. The moment he did, a distorted voice crackled through the speaker, sending chills down his spine. "Leave, before it's too late." The voice warned, garbled and echoing as if it were coming from a great distance. Jake's heart raced as he glanced around, the hairs on the back of his neck standing on end. He quickly hung up, his mind racing. Who was calling him? And why did it sound so urgent? He looked back toward the road, the darkness creeping in around him. The woman had vanished, but the feeling of being watched lingered. He took a deep breath, trying to calm himself. Maybe it was just a prank call, he thought. But as he stood there, the silence of the night felt oppressive, and the shadows seemed to shift and dance at the edges of his vision. Jake decided he needed to get back to his car and figure out a way to call for help. He turned to head back, but as he did, he heard a rustling sound behind him. He spun around, heart pounding, but there was nothing there, just the empty road and the darkening woods beyond. "Get a grip, Jake," he muttered to himself, forcing his legs to move. He hurried back to the car, but as he reached it, he noticed something strange. The air felt charged, electric, and the temperature had dropped significantly. He could see his breath in the cool night air. Suddenly, his phone buzzed again, and he glanced down to see another missed call from the same unknown number. This time, he hesitated before answering. What if it was someone in trouble? He pressed the button, and the distorted voice returned, more frantic this time. "Leave now. It's not safe. You're in danger." The voice crackled and faded, leaving Jake feeling more unsettled than ever. "Who is this?" he shouted into the phone, but there was no response, just static. He felt a surge of panic. He had to get out of there. He jumped into the car, fumbling with the keys as he tried to start the engine. The car sputtered but didn't turn over. "Come on," he urged, panic rising in his chest. He tried again, but the engine only coughed and died. Frustrated, he slammed his hands against the steering wheel. He was stranded. Just then, he heard a soft whisper, barely audible over the sound of his own heartbeat. "Help me." The voice was faint, almost a sigh, but it sent a jolt of fear through him. He turned to look out the window, and there, standing at the edge of the road, was the woman in the white dress. "Please," she beckoned, her eyes wide and pleading. "You have to help me." Jake's instincts screamed at him to drive away, but something in her gaze held him captive. "What do you want?" he called out, his voice trembling. "Don't trust them," the woman said, her voice barely above a whisper, yet it carried an urgency that sent chills down Jake's spine. "They're not what they seem. You have to leave before they come for you." Jake's heart raced as he processed her words. Who's coming for me?" he shouted, desperation creeping into his voice. The shadows around her seemed to deepen, and he could feel an oppressive weight in the air, as if the very night was closing in on him. "Please," she urged, stepping closer to the car. "You don't have much time. They're drawn to fear, and they'll take you if you stay." Suddenly, the phone buzzed again, and Jake glanced down to see yet another missed call from the unknown number. The distorted voice returned, more frantic than before. "Get out. Get out now. They're coming." Panic surged through him, and he turned back to the woman. "What do I do?" he asked, his voice shaking. "How do I get out of here?" "Start the car," she urged, her eyes wide with fear. "You have to drive away. Don't look back." With a surge of adrenaline, Jake turned the key in the ignition once more. This time, the engine roared to life, and he felt a rush of relief. He glanced at the woman, who was now standing just outside his window, her expression a mix of hope and fear. "Go!" she shouted, and without thinking, he slammed the car into gear and hit the gas. The tires screeched as he sped down the road, the headlights cutting through the darkness. As he drove, he could feel the weight of the night pressing in around him, the shadows seeming to reach for the car. He glanced in the rearview mirror, half expecting to see the woman still standing there, but she was gone. Instead, he saw something else, dark figures emerging from the trees, their forms shifting and swirling like smoke. "Don't look back," the woman's voice echoed in his mind, and he forced himself to focus on the road ahead. He drove faster, the engine roaring as he pushed the car to its limits. The figures in the mirror faded into the darkness, but he could still feel their presence, a cold chill creeping into the car. After what felt like an eternity, he finally reached a fork in the road. One path led deeper into the woods, while the other opened up to a well-lit highway. Without hesitation, he veered toward the highway, relief flooding through him as the lights of civilization came into view. As he drove onto the highway, the oppressive feeling began to lift, and the shadows receded. He glanced at his phone, still buzzing with missed calls from the unknown number. He quickly silenced it, not wanting to hear that distorted voice again. Jake continued driving, the familiar sights of towns and gas stations bringing him comfort. He finally pulled into a well-lit diner, the neon sign flickering invitingly. He parked the car and stepped out, his legs shaky from the adrenaline. Inside, the warmth of the diner enveloped him, and he took a seat at the counter, ordering a cup of coffee to steady his nerves. As he sat there, he couldn't shake the feeling that he had narrowly escaped something terrible. The waitress, a kind-looking woman with a warm smile, noticed his pale complexion. "You okay, hon? You look like you've seen a ghost." Jake chuckled nervously, the tension in his shoulders easing slightly. "You could say that. I was driving through the back roads, and well, I had a strange encounter." "Strange encounters are common around here," she said, pouring him a steaming cup of coffee. "This area has its share of legends. People say the road can play tricks on you, especially at night." He nodded, recalling the woman in white and the distorted voice warning him. "I believe it. I think I saw someone." The waitress leaned in closer, her expression serious. "If you ever see a woman in white, you best heed her warning. She's known to help those in danger, but not everyone listens." Jake's heart raced as he realized the truth. The woman had been trying to save him, to warn him of the danger that lurked in the shadows. "I did listen," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. "I got away." "Good," she replied, her eyes softening. "Just remember, not everyone is as lucky. Some don't make it out." As he sipped his coffee, Jake felt a sense of gratitude wash over him. He had escaped the darkness of the lonely road, but he would never forget the warning he had received. He glanced out the window, the night sky. The sun dipped below the horizon, casting an eerie glow over the dense foliage of the remote island. Known only to a few, the Island of Dolls was a place shrouded in mystery and legend. It was said that the spirits of lost souls inhabited the dolls that hung from the trees, their glassy eyes watching every move of the unwary traveler. Evelyn, a solo adventurer with a penchant for the macabre, had heard the tales and felt an irresistible pull to explore the island. Armed with only a flashlight, a camera, and her unwavering curiosity, she set foot on the sandy shore as the last rays of sunlight faded away. The air was thick with humidity, and the distant sound of waves crashing against the rocks echoed in the twilight. As she ventured deeper into the island, the trees grew denser, their gnarled branches adorned with an unsettling collection of dolls. Some were old and weathered, their faces cracked and faded, while others were newer, their bright colors stark against the darkening sky. Evelyn felt a chill run down her spine as she approached the first doll, a porcelain figure with a cracked smile and hollow eyes. It seemed to stare right through her, and she quickly snapped a photo, eager to capture the haunting beauty of the place. As night fell, the atmosphere shifted. The once serene sounds of nature were replaced by an unsettling silence, broken only by the rustling of leaves. Evelyn's heart raced as she continued her exploration, the beam of her flashlight flickering over the dolls that hung like grotesque ornaments. She could have sworn she saw one of them shift slightly, but when she turned to look, it remained still. Suddenly, a whisper floated through the air, soft and melodic, yet laced with an undercurrent of sorrow. "Evelyn!" It called, her name echoing in the stillness. She froze, her breath hitching in her throat. The voice was ethereal, almost as if it were carried on the wind. "Evelyn, come play with us." Panic surged through her as she realized the whispers were coming from the dolls. They seemed to sway gently in the breeze, their heads tilting as if beckoning her closer. She stumbled backward, her instinct screaming at her to flee, but her curiosity held her in place. What were these spirits? What had happened to them? As she turned to leave, the whispers grew louder, a cacophony of voices intertwining, each one pleading for her attention. "Stay with us. Don't leave us." The dolls began to sway more violently, their eyes glinting in the moonlight, and Evelyn felt an overwhelming sense of dread wash over her. She turned and ran, the flashlight beam bouncing wildly as she navigated through the trees. The whispers followed her, growing more frantic, more desperate. "Join us, Evelyn. You belong with us." The air grew colder, and she could feel the presence of the spirits closing in around her. Just as she thought she might escape, she stumbled into a clearing. In the center stood a large, twisted tree, its branches heavy with dolls of all shapes and sizes. They hung like macabre ornaments, their eyes glimmering with an unnatural light. Evelyn's heart raced as she realized this was the heart of the island, the source of the whispers. In a moment of clarity, she understood that the dolls were not just toys, they were the souls of those who had been lost to the island, trapped in a never-ending cycle of despair. They were calling to her, trying to lure her into their world. She had to escape before she became one of them. With renewed determination, Evelyn sprinted back the way she came, the whispers now a deafening roar in her ears. The dolls seemed to reach out, their tiny hands grasping at her clothes, trying to pull her back. She could feel their cold fingers brush against her skin, but she pushed forward, fueled by the instinct to survive. Finally, she burst through the trees and onto the beach, the moonlight illuminating her path. She ran toward the water, her heart pounding in her chest. The whispers faded behind her, replaced by the sound of crashing waves. She dove into the ocean, the cool water enveloping her as she swam with all her might, desperate to put distance between herself and the island. As she reached the safety of her boat, she looked back at the island of dolls, its silhouette dark against the moonlit sky. The whispers had ceased, but she could still feel their presence lingering in the air. Evelyn knew she had escaped, but the memory of the dolls and their sorrowful cries would haunt her forever. As she sailed away, she vowed never to return, leaving the island and its lost souls behind. But deep down, she knew that the island of dolls would always be a part of her, a chilling reminder of the spirits that called out for companionship, forever trapped in their eerie. Complete it. GPT-4o Mini. Forever trapped in their eerie, silent world. Days turned into weeks, and Evelyn tried to return to her normal life, but the experience haunted her. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw the dolls swaying in the moonlight, their eyes glinting with a mix of sorrow and longing. The whispers echoed in her mind, a constant reminder of the souls she had encountered. Determined to understand what had happened, she began researching the island and its history. She discovered that it was once home to a small village, where a tragic event had taken place. A mysterious illness had swept through, claiming the lives of many, including children. The villagers, in their grief, had hung dolls in the trees as offerings to the spirits of the lost, hoping to appease them and find peace. But instead, the dolls became vessels for the restless souls, forever bound to the island. Evelyn felt a deep sense of empathy for the spirits. They were not malevolent, they were simply lost, yearning for connection and understanding. The more she learned, the more she felt compelled to help them find peace. She decided to return to the island, not as an adventurer seeking thrills, but as a mediator between the living and the dead. Equipped with offerings, flowers, candles, and a journal to document her experience, Evelyn set sail once more. As she approached the island, a sense of foreboding washed over her, but she steeled herself. This time, she would not run. She would face the spirits and offer them the compassion they so desperately needed. As she stepped onto the shore, the air felt charged with energy. The dolls hung silently from the trees, their eyes watching her with a mix of curiosity and caution. Evelyn took a deep breath and began to speak, her voice steady and calm. "I have come to listen to your stories. I want to understand your pain and help you find peace." The wind picked up, rustling the leaves and sending a shiver down her spine. For a moment, there was silence, and then the whispers began again, softer this time, almost like a gentle breeze. "Evelyn, you returned." She walked deeper into the island, placing the flowers at the base of the twisted tree that had once felt so ominous. As she lit the candles, she felt a warmth envelop her, as if the spirits were gathering around her, drawn to her sincerity. She opened her journal and began to write, documenting the stories she felt in her heart, the tales of lost children, grieving parents, and the sorrow that had bound them to this place. As she wrote, the whispers grew clearer, and she could almost hear the voices of the spirits sharing their stories with her. They spoke of love, loss, and the longing for connection. Evelyn listened intently, her heart aching for them. She promised to share their stories with the world, to ensure they would not be forgotten. Hours passed, and as the sun began to set, casting a golden hue over the island, Evelyn felt a shift in the air. The dolls, once so still, began to sway gently, as if in response to her words. The whispers transformed into a harmonious melody, a song of release and gratitude. In that moment, Evelyn understood that she had helped the spirits find their voice. They were no longer trapped in despair, they were free to move on. As the last light of day faded, she felt a profound sense of peace wash over her. The dolls, once eerie and unsettling, now seemed to glow with a soft light, their eyes filled with gratitude. With a heart full of hope, Evelyn made her way back to the shore. As she sailed away from the island of dolls, she looked back one last time. The dolls hung silently from the trees, but now they seemed to be at rest, their spirits finally free. Evelyn returned to her life, forever changed by her experience. She shared the stories of the island and its lost souls, ensuring that their memories lived on. The Island of Dolls became a symbol of compassion and understanding, a reminder that even in the darkest places, there is always a chance for redemption and peace. And though she never returned to the island, Evelyn carried its lessons in her heart, knowing that sometimes. The clock on the wall ticked ominously, its sound echoing through the empty train station. The fluorescent lights flickered intermittently, casting long shadows that danced across the cracked tiles. It was late at night, and the only sign of life was a solitary traveler named Alex, who sat on a cold metal bench, anxiously checking their watch. The train was late, and the stillness of the station felt suffocating. As Alex waited, they noticed a figure sitting at the far end of the platform. The figure was shrouded in darkness, their features obscured by a wide-brimmed hat and a long coat that seemed to absorb the light around it. The figure sat perfectly still, staring directly at Alex with an intensity that sent chills down their spine. Alex shifted uncomfortably, trying to convince themselves it was just their imagination playing tricks in the dim light. The air grew heavy, and an unsettling feeling settled in the pit of Alex's stomach. They glanced at the clock again. It was almost midnight. The train should have arrived by now. As they looked back at the figure, they found it had moved closer, now only a few benches away. The figure's gaze remained fixed on Alex, unblinking and unnerving. Just then, the distant sound of a train whistle pierced the silence, growing louder as it approached. Alex's heart raced, a mix of relief and anxiety flooding their senses. They stood up, ready to board, but when they turned to look at the figure one last time, it had vanished. The bench was empty, as if the figure had never been there at all. The train screeched to a halt, its doors sliding open with a hiss. Alex hesitated for a moment, glancing back at the empty platform, but the urgency of the moment pushed them forward. They stepped onto the train, the interior dimly lit and eerily quiet. The doors closed behind them with a finality that sent a shiver down their spine. As Alex made their way down the aisle, they noticed something unusual. A ticket lying on the seat. It was a one-way ticket to a destination they had never chosen, Elysium. Confusion washed over them. They had intended to travel to a nearby city, not some mysterious place they had never heard of. Before they could process this, a conductor appeared, his uniform crisp and his expression grave. He approached Alex, his eyes dark and serious. "You need to get off this train," he said, his voice low and urgent. "It's not safe. This train doesn't go where you think it does." Alex's heart raced. "What do you mean?" "I just want to go home." The conductor shook his head, glancing nervously down the aisle. "Elysium is not a place for the living. It's a destination for those who have lost their way. You must leave before it's too late." Panic surged through Alex. They turned to the door, but it was locked tight, the windows fogged with an unnatural chill. "How do I get off?" they demanded, desperation creeping into their voice. The conductor stepped closer, his expression softening. "You must confront what you fear. The train will not stop until you face the truth of your journey." He gestured toward the front of the train. "You have to go there. It's the only way." With no other choice, Alex nodded and made their way to the front of the train, the rhythmic clatter of the wheels beneath them growing louder. As they walked, the atmosphere shifted. The lights flickered, and shadows seemed to stretch and twist, whispering secrets that sent shivers down Alex's spine. When they reached the front, the conductor stood waiting, his expression unreadable. "You're almost there," he said, gesturing toward a door that led to the engine room. "But you must be prepared. What you find inside may change everything." Taking a deep breath, Alex opened the door and stepped inside. The room was filled with the sound of machinery and the smell of smoke. In the center stood a large, ornate mirror, its surface shimmering like water. As Alex approached, they saw their reflection, but it was distorted, showing not just their physical form but also flashes of memories, moments of regret, fear, and loss. Suddenly, the figure from the station appeared in the mirror, its eyes piercing through the glass. "You cannot escape your past," it whispered, its voice echoing in Alex's mind. "You must confront what you've tried to forget." Images flooded Alex's mind, the friends they had lost, the opportunities they had let slip away, the fears that had held them back. Tears streamed down their face as they faced the truth of their journey, the weight of their choices and the pain of their regrets. "I'm sorry," Alex whispered, the words escaping their lips like a prayer. "I didn't mean to run away from it all. I just wanted to escape the pain." As the words left their mouth, the mirror began to ripple, and the figure's expression softened. "Acknowledgement is the first step toward healing," it said, its voice now gentle. "You cannot change the past, but you can choose how to carry it forward." With each word, the memories in the mirror began to shift, transforming from painful reminders into lessons learned. Alex saw moments of joy intertwined with sorrow, the laughter of friends, the warmth of love, and the strength gained from overcoming challenges. The weight that had pressed down on their heart began to lift, replaced by a sense of clarity and acceptance. The conductor appeared beside Alex, nodding in approval. "You've faced your truth. Now you can choose your path." He gestured toward the mirror, which now reflected a bright light, inviting and warm. "Step through, and you will find your way back." With a newfound sense of purpose, Alex took a deep breath and stepped toward the mirror. As they crossed the threshold, the world around them dissolved into a swirl of colors and sounds, and for a moment, they felt weightless, as if they were being reborn. When the swirling stopped, Alex found themselves back at the deserted train station. The clock still ticking away the minutes. The air felt lighter, and the oppressive atmosphere had lifted. The platform was empty, but the sense of dread that had once filled the space was gone. The train that had brought them here was nowhere to be seen, but Alex felt a sense of peace wash over them. They had faced their fears and emerged stronger, ready to embrace the future. As they stepped off the platform and into the cool night air, they noticed a small, glowing ticket in their hand. It read simply, "Elysium, a new beginning." With a smile, Alex tucked the ticket away, knowing that while the past would always be a part of them, it no longer held power over their life. They walked away from the station, the night sky above filled with stars, each one a reminder of the journey ahead, a journey of healing, growth, and the promise of new adventures. As they made their way down the quiet street, Alex felt a sense of hope blossoming within. The train station, once a place of fear and uncertainty, had transformed into a symbol of resilience and self-discovery. They were ready to embrace whatever came next, knowing that they had the strength to face it all. The sun hung low in the sky, casting long shadows through the dense canopy of the forest. Sarah, an avid hiker, had set out early that morning, eager to explore the winding trails of the Forest of Shadows. The forest was known for its beauty, but also for its disorienting paths that could lead even the most experienced adventurers astray. As the hours passed, Sarah found herself captivated by the towering trees and the vibrant underbrush, losing track of time. By the time she realized how far she had wandered, the sun was dipping below the horizon, and the forest was cloaked in twilight. Panic began to set in as she retraced her steps, but the familiar landmarks had vanished, replaced by an overwhelming sense of disorientation. The trees loomed taller and closer, their branches intertwining like skeletal fingers reaching for her. As darkness enveloped the forest, Sarah's heart raced. The sounds of the night came alive. Crickets chirped, leaves rustled, and somewhere in the distance, an owl hooted. But there was something else, a faint whispering that seemed to echo through the trees, just beyond her comprehension. She quickened her pace, her breath coming in short gasps. After what felt like hours of wandering, Sarah stumbled into a clearing. The moonlight illuminated a circle of ancient stones, each one covered in moss and etched with strange symbols. A chill ran down her spine as she realized she had entered a sacred ground, a place that felt both inviting and foreboding. The whispers grew louder, swirling around her like a haunting melody. "Leave this place," a voice echoed, soft yet commanding. Sarah spun around, searching for the source, but the shadows danced around her, shifting and swirling in the moonlight. The air grew thick with an otherworldly energy, and she felt an inexplicable pull toward the center of the stone circle. "Who's there?" she called out, her voice trembling. The shadows seemed to respond, coalescing into vague shapes that flickered at the edge of her vision. Fear gripped her heart as she realized she was not alone. The forest had come alive, and it was watching her. Desperate to escape, Sarah turned to leave the clearing, but the shadows surged forward, blocking her path. "You cannot leave," they whispered in unison, their voices a chilling chorus. "You have entered our domain." Panic surged through her as she backed away, her mind racing for a solution. She remembered the stories she had heard about the Forest of Shadows, tales of lost souls who had wandered too far and never returned. The thought of becoming one of them filled her with dread. "Please, I didn't mean to intrude," she pleaded, her voice breaking. "I just want to go home." The shadows paused, their forms flickering as if considering her words. "Home is a distant memory for those who enter here," one shadow replied, its voice softer now. "But perhaps there is a way for you to escape." "What do I have to do?" Sarah asked, her heart pounding in her chest. "To leave, you must confront your fears," the shadow said. "Only then can you find your way back to the light." With a deep breath, Sarah steeled herself. She had always been afraid of the dark, of the unknown, and of being lost. But she realized that fear had held her back for too long. "I will face my fears," she declared, her voice steady. "I refuse to be trapped here." As she spoke, the shadows began to swirl around her, forming a vortex of darkness. Images flashed before her eyes, memories of her childhood, moments of doubt, and the times she had felt lost in her life. Each memory was a shadow of its own, and she felt their weight pressing down on her. But instead of succumbing to fear, Sarah embraced each memory, acknowledging the pain and uncertainty they brought. "I am not defined by my fears," she said aloud, her voice growing stronger. "I am more than my past." With each declaration, the shadows began to recede, their forms dissipating into the night. The air grew lighter, and the whispers transformed into a gentle breeze that caressed her face. The stone circle glowed softly, illuminating the path back to the forest. As the last of the shadows faded, Sarah felt a surge of energy and clarity. The way out was clear, and she could see the trail leading back to safety. With newfound determination, she stepped forward, leaving the sacred ground behind. The forest, once dark and foreboding, now felt alive with possibility. The moonlight guided her steps, and the whispers of the shadows faded into the background, replaced by the soothing sounds of the night. As she walked, Sarah felt a sense of peace wash over her, knowing she had faced her fears and emerged stronger. After what felt like a short while, she finally reached the edge of the forest, where the trees thinned out and the familiar sounds of the outside world began to filter in. The distant hum of traffic and the soft glow of streetlights welcomed her back to reality. Sarah paused for a moment, taking a deep breath of the cool night air, grateful to be free from the forest of shadows. As she stepped into the clearing beyond the trees, she turned back to look at the forest one last time. The moonlight illuminated the treetops, and for a brief moment, she thought she saw a flicker of movement among the branches, a shadow darting away, perhaps a final farewell from the spirits she had encountered. But this time, instead of fear, she felt a sense of understanding. The forest was not just a place of darkness, it was a realm of lessons, a reminder of the strength that lay within her. With a renewed sense of purpose, Sarah made her way to her car parked at the trailhead. The experience had changed her. She felt lighter, as if a weight had been lifted from her shoulders. She had faced her fears and emerged not just unscathed, but empowered. As she drove away from the forest, the memories of the shadows lingered in her mind, but they no longer held power over her. Instead, they served as a reminder of her resilience and the importance of confronting the darkness within. She realized that everyone has their own shadows to face, and it was through acknowledging them that one could truly find freedom. In the days that followed, Sarah shared her experience with friends and family, encouraging them to confront their own fears and uncertainties. She began to explore new hiking trails, each one a testament to her courage and willingness to embrace the unknown. The forest of shadows had taught her that fear is a natural part of life, but it does not have to define her journey. And every now and then, when the night was particularly quiet, she would find herself gazing at the stars, remembering the whispers of the forest and the shadows that had once threatened to trap her. But instead of dread, she felt gratitude for the lessons learned and the strength gained. The forest would always be a part of her story, a chapter that had shaped her into the person she was becoming. As she continued her adventures, Sarah carried the spirit of the forest of shadows with her, a reminder that even in the darkest places, there is always a path back to the light. And with each step she took, she knew she was never truly lost again.